So this week's episode of Dororo has to be not only my favorite episode of this series to date, but I would put it as my favorite episode of the winter 2019 season up till now. Granted, we are just approaching the halfway mark for most of the anime that are airing, so there is a lot of time for other anime to release a stellar episode. Hell, this series will probably release an episode that will make this one look like chump change. But this episode really did a lot for me, and I love it so damn much that right now this is my top pick for episode of the season. A lot of what happened in this episode is what I was expecting. Last week I did mention when you play both sides of a war, you have to expect someone's dying. But my assumption was she would die, the kids could die, one of them would die, but I wasn't expecting both, and I wasn't expecting that to happen because Hikamaru decided to go and kill the beast, and if only he'd stayed, he would be able to deal with the soldiers. Like, that's something that now is going to eat away at him, that if he didn't go to fight the monster right then and there, if he would have stayed put, he could have helped protect them. That is way worse than anything I was expecting, and that's what makes it so damn beautiful and tragic all at once. This episode was incredible, and there's a lot to go over. First things first, I gotta say, I do like the idea that as Hikamaru does regain more and more and take back what was taken from him from these demons, this king and his father are getting weaker and weaker. You're starting to see that, you know, every year rain was always plentiful. There was always rain to keep the crops growing. But now we're starting to see that as he regains parts from these demons, the rain is getting less and less frequent. We're seeing that as we're finally getting rain after he regained his leg, the rain stopped, and we're seeing these demon statues kind of break. I do like that attention to detail to show us that as things are regaining to our main character, the kingdom is getting weaker and weaker, and you know it's gonna bite him in the ass eventually. Sure, we may hate the father, but look at the other son or look at the mother. There's nothing that's actually wrong with them. I mean, what I like is how they are putting some emphasis on this kid who is seeing that, like, for whatever reason, it feels like no matter how good he is, no matter how kind his mother is to him, something's different, like they're both hiding something away. And I feel like the direction the anime wants to go is to put this character against Hikamaru at some point in time, and they're going to want us to hate this character. And I'm sure plenty of anime fans think he's just an overly snobby brat, but you got to look at it from his perspective. He doesn't know about his brother, he doesn't know what happened to his brother, and doesn't know what his father did to gain the power that he has. Very excited to see the direction that kid's going to go, because really, he's done nothing wrong, and he's just trying to get the honor and love of his parents, and I think that's going to be pretty interesting because his mother, of course, is going to love him, but she misses her first child, and I think that's such a tragic and heartbreaking story that I'm really excited to see more of. I'm sure most people just want to focus on our main samurai regaining what he lost, but I do like the idea that they aren't tossing this family story out of the window and are showcasing a different side to this very tragic tale, and I think that's going to be interesting to see where that's going to go going forward, especially when the two brothers finally meet. But in terms of the actual content, I have to say this was very, very depressing, but also beautiful all at the same time. One of my favorite conversations in this episode is between Dororo as well as Mio, and this conversation is essentially him saying how his mother died, and the only job that the mother wouldn't do was prostitution, and how that was honorable that she wouldn't do that, but because she wasn't willing to do that, she ultimately ended up dead, where Mio is saying, like, I'm not ashamed of it. The thing that hurts is the physical abuse, the emotional abuse, but I'm taking back what was taken from me. And that conversation, especially with how they directed it with the use of shadows overlaying on these characters, it was directed as such a beautiful but sort of heartbreaking scene that it was just so mesmerizing and just something that really took my breath away and also made me a little depressed. And I think the idea that she did die regaining those seeds, it's a little bit of a heartwarming and kind of bittersweet way to wrap up her story. Of course, she deserved to live, as did these kids, but I am glad at the very least she was able to get those seeds, so her hope and future, it was there in her final moments. So that's sort of kind of beautiful to look at in that way. It's interesting how this guy is regaining his body parts, because last week I assumed he got his voice back from the bird that was killed by the priest, and some people were saying no, it was that spider thing that gave him his voice, but the spider was still alive in this episode, so he had to have got his voice back from the bird. He just didn't realize he had it back until he lost his leg, and after he killed that spider, he regained his leg. That's my assumption on how the body parts worked in this episode. Correct me if I am wrong down in the comment section, but but that's my assumption of how everything happened. But I do like how there's such a beautiful relationship between these two, because she feels like she does have a dirty soul, but we do see her soul from his perspective. It's white, it's pure, and I like the idea of how, you know, she's always being fondled and touched at night, and she doesn't like human touch, but when Hikamaru actually does touch her, it's those hands aren't something that she's afraid of. Like, this is a love story that you wish could continue. Like, this was a true love story at the end of the day, but like with most love stories set around a samurai war-driven period, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and there's going to be some heartache in these stories, and I think it would be a disservice if it was just a peaceful resolution. I love this character. I love Hikamaru, and I feel so sorry for the rage and loss that he had to deal with, but it almost would feel like a cheap way out if this did end in a peaceful resolution, because we're in a time of war. We're in a land with demons. Things shouldn't just be happy-go-lucky, especially in the early stages. Sure, maybe in the end stages you could have that. Even then, it could feel like a disservice for a series like this, because it is about the tragic realism of the human life. Yes, we are surrounded by demons and carnage and blood, but the human interactions and the way things play out, if you remove the more mystical elements, it feels grounded for the time period, and I'm glad they're not going the route of cheapening things and making everyone get a happy-go-lucky, fulfilling adventure where everything works out by the end. No, bad things can happen, and bad things did happen in this episode, which is why it's so damn powerful. I think just the conversations and the little moments between Hikamaru as well as Mio were so beautifully done. I do like seeing how Hikamaru's soul is so clouded and there's these fragments, and I like the idea of the priest saying, watch out for him, because right now we don't know what will come out of that shell when it's all said and done. Will he be a beast or will he be a human? Because there are traces of those demons in his soul, and I think when you see what happened at the end of the episode, you can see the beast that could be triggered if he's not kept intact. And that entire final sequence was so beautifully and brutally done. The way fired, the way the soldiers were screaming, and just like, even though they were kind of the antagonists in this situation, it almost felt like Hikamaru went too brutal, like he was an animal enjoying the kill. And it's kind of this interesting thing, because as he gets more human, you shouldn't want to see him enjoy something like that or get that rage or pleasure. And it was such a brutal scene, and Dororo just hugging Hikamaru and being like, you have to stop, like look at what she was able to get before she died. And to have the first thing that he truly said after regaining his voice, if you ignore the screaming, the first word was her name. Like, right in the heart, right in the feels. That was beautifully done. I'm so glad this was a two-parter and not a one-parter, because really, if this was one episode, this wouldn't be that emotional. It would be like, oh, they kind of force something down our throat, but because they built up to it, masterfully done, masterfully done. All the individual facial reactions, just the way you can get so much emotion from pain to just, you know, these subtle happy cues, especially from Mio when she's smiling and kind of being like, you know, she just has these very cute moments between her and Hikamaru. Like, it's so tragic and beautiful. Like, all this episode, I'm like, you can't have a happy ending, but maybe she'll get to live on the land. Maybe the kids will die, maybe she'll die and the kids will live, something like that. But to have them all die because he didn't sit still, and you can't blame him, but you know at the same time, if he did stay, they would still be alive, and then he could go kill the monster. Like, this man, give him a hug, give him a day off, let him be at peace for one day without having to kill or feel something bad. Like, just as he gets more human and as he feels more and more things, he's learning what it's like to be human, and he's probably thinking, maybe I should just be a demon if this is what it feels to be human. The pain, the torment, the loss, that is so horrible. Like, this man, he can't have a happy ending. Like, there's no way. There's no way after what we've seen over the past couple of months of this that he could have a happy ending. And that's what makes it so gripping, is that you have the samurai story that isn't trying to cater to like the normality and how to properly make a story. They're okay with being brutal. They're okay with showing you the dark sides of war and showing us that there is no good or bad, and that depending on the side of the war that you fall on, bad things can happen. Because yes, even though his father is a scumbag and did horrible things to his son, his people aren't. His people are just living their lives, so why do they deserve to suffer? And why does the other side deserve to suffer because of shitty rulership? Seriously, this is incredible. The voice acting, I have to say, finally hearing Hikamaru talk, and that just, the words, emotionally and just perfectly done. All of the voice acting, though, was incredible. It's interesting. This story, I don't know how I want it to proceed. Like, that's what's interesting, because usually I feel like, okay, if you have a story about a character who's regaining his humanity, you want to see him regain his humanity. But for me, it's like, Well, as he regains it, he's losing more and more of himself, and he's feeling worse and worse. Like, so why do we want him to regain his humanity, and what's the end goal? Does he kill his father? Because once he regains his humanity, that kingdom is screwed. The other kingdom's gonna invade. They're gonna kill all these innocent people because of the dealings of a shitty king. Does his mother deserve to be killed because of the father's doing? Like, there's no happy ending for this. Like, there's no fairy tale ending here. I really don't think there is, and that's what makes it so compelling, because you don't know exactly where it can and should end, and it keeps you watching. And this episode was tragic. It was beautiful. The visuals, once again, were so good. The way shadows were used, casting on these characters, they almost give the sense of romance and hope, and just how Myo was covering up so many scars. This girl was doing her best, and the fact that she wasn't ashamed of her work, and that she was proud that she was keeping these kids safe, is respectable and very admirable. This is easily my favorite anime of the season, and it's not because the season is lackluster. There is so many good picks, but I feel like all of the good picks in the season you expect at some point to be in an anime season. You got the returning hits, you got new and interesting ideas, but a series like Dororo you don't expect to ever see in an anime season. It's this sleeper hit that comes in and you see what Studio Mappa is doing and you're just like, why hasn't this been done already? This is amazing and it's such a surprise, whereas the other fantastic anime, they are expected. You expect the JoJo's, you expect the Kaguya-samas of the season. As good as they are, you expect them. This is the type of anime you don't expect, and that's why it's so damn compelling. Let me know, though, whatever you thought of this week's episode. Did it hit you like me? Is it your favorite episode? Was there a better arc up till now? Whatever you're feeling, because this is a very complex episode, be sure to let me know whatever you're feeling down in that comment section below. And remember to leave a like if you did enjoy this video, and also subscribe to the channel if you happen to be new. But until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.